How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Garcia. Now, last night's game got postponed, obviously. I live pretty close to the stadium, in fact, and it stopped raining out for a while. I feel like if they started, it would have been really, really late. But, at the end of the day, this obviously really only gives an advantage to the Houston Astros, who just get to rest, while we have to utilize most of our bullpens, some of our starters. Of course, Nestor Cortez is going to start today against Aaron Savali. And, we're going to discuss how that kind of gives the Yankees a bit of an advantage because they're not using Shane Bieber. Garrett Cole was like, I could pitch today if you needed me to. I don't think the Yankees want to go down that route, but Cortez being available definitely gives them the pitching advantage. And I think that little bit of leverage could be enough to get them past Cleveland tonight, let alone just an offensive team that is more than capable of just having standout performances. We talked about Savali yesterday. We'll kind of recap that, give you an idea of just how the Yankees can take advantage of him. And I think we have an idea in terms of using one of their secret weapons, Matt Carpenter. He's only gotten one at bat during the postseason, but Savali kind of struggles against lefties. So I'm definitely curious to see how they kind of enact some of these guys and get them involved. But, Ryan, what are your thoughts about the postponed game last night? We're going to discuss IKF, who was heckled by some fans trying to leave the stadium in his car, which is absolutely unacceptable. There's a difference between social media, criticism and whatnot for his performance, and then actually going after the man in person. I think that's, just not who we are as a fan base. And I'm embarrassed for the people that did that. So, I want to get your take on that and a couple other things we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, so first off, when it comes to the delay, I mean, I get it. They don't want, to play a do or die game at, 10:30. It's unfortunate. I mean, it's New York. I think we got to start looking at, getting like a roof or something for Yankee Stadium because, I mean, ultimately it's a rainy place. It gets cold early in the year. There's going to be rainouts and in meaningful postseason games. You can't really have that long term. But, kind of talking about the situation with the Yankees pitching matchup now today, instead of having Tyone go, they're going to have Nestor go on short rest. I don't think Nestor's going to go deep into this game. I think 3, 4, 5 innings, somewhere in that range is kind of what we're looking at here. I think it plays to the Yankees' advantage. I think Nestor, you look at how the Cleveland Guardians have dealt with left-handed pitching. They haven't dealt with it very well all year. They got to Nestor a little bit in his first start. Hopefully this second start, Nestor's a little more prepared. He has, a little bit better command, and he's able to put away guys a little more effectively. They're going to still start Savali against the Yankees. Savali is really struggling on the road. His ERA is near 6 on the road. But Savali's one of those guys with, his fastballs are terrible, but his curveball is really, really good. So I'm expecting to see a heavy dose of those curveballs against the Yankees. Curveball is a pitch that has a lot of depth. So against righties, it'll do well, but also it'll do very well against lefties. So a guy like Matt Carpenter tonight, not that I'm anticipating that he would start, but I'm anticipating that he's going to come in a big spot because I don't think Savali is necessarily such I don't think he's necessarily the type of guy that is killed by lefties. He actually performs a little bit better against lefties than he does against righties. So, I don't think that the Yankees are going to be hard pressed to put him in the lineup and sit down one of their righties. Maybe they get a good at bat out of Carpenter, later in the game when they have one of those harder righties like Karinchak or Clase or maybe even Bieber. And those are guys you want to bring in a Carpenter for, a good veteran lefty that'll have good at bats there. Tonight's going to be all hands on deck. Even Garrett Cole was saying yesterday after throwing 110 pitches, he's ready to go if need be. Boone probably isn't going to go to him because, that would be insane. But, everyone's ready to go. Everyone's rested. Everyone's going to get at least a thought about coming into the game. And so it's not, however many innings it takes, however many pitchers you need to use, Aaron Boone's going to be ready to use the entire might and force of his 12-man pitching staff tonight to take on the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, we're a little bit rested. That one extra day, honestly, yesterday kind of gives us a little bit more comfort using Clay Holmes and Wandy Peralta again. So there is an advantage. Of course, bullpen for the Cleveland Guardians is rather rested. Clase and whatever they have in there, Morgan, they have some good arms. And ultimately, the Yankees need to be wary of that, but they need to take advantage. They need to jump on Savali immediately. They cannot let him get out of the game without getting a couple runs on the board because, like you said, his fastball stuff, his fastball variants are bad. His curveball, good, but you can kind of lay off of those. You don't have to swing at those all the time. You can kind of just sit fastball and wait for those to get to you, and hopefully take advantage of a couple of bad pitches, poorly located pitches. He gives up a lot of homers, 1.30 home runs per 9 this season, 1.6 home runs per 9 last year. And the reason I kind of want to talk about Matt Carpenter is because against right-handed pitching, especially guys like Savali, he kind of rakes against them. And, Savali, he really struggled against lefties this year. Against righties specifically, he gave up 53 hits over 53 innings. So he gives up a hit an inning on average. Against lefties, he gave up 40 hits, 13 walks, and 7 strikeouts over 43 innings. So, it's rather 7 home runs. So, he does get batted around a little bit. Matt Carpenter is very, very good against right-handed pitching. This is a guy that I think would be a good option to utilize early in the game. He hit 295 with 10 homers and 21 RBIs over 95 at bats against lefty pitching. So, I'll ask you this, or rather righty pitching, apologies. So I'll ask you this. Do you think that there's a reality or a justification for maybe starting Matt Carpenter in this game, letting him get the at-bats against Savali, and then maybe you don't put Stanton in for the first at-bat or two, and then you put him in after that, or maybe you just start Matt Carpenter in the outfield and then take him out for Hicks after an at-bat or two? How do you think the Yankees could get Carpenter involved in this game early on to take advantage of Savali, who's struggling in that factor?
Yeah, so I would, if I'm going to have Carpenter not play a full game, I'd rather have him off the bench just because I can choose when he comes into the game, if you get what I'm saying. We don't really know what the highest leverage and, the highest leverage part of the game is going to be. It could, I know that, I think that the Yankees, if they jump out to an early lead, they'll secure a win. If Cleveland jumps out to early lead, they'll secure a win. It's down to the starters, how they perform, because the bullpens we know are going to show up. And we know we're not going to be able to go out and get to Clase and Karinchak and Stefan. So it's not like the Yankees game plan should be relying on getting to the back end of that Cleveland bullpen, because that's their strength. But at the same time, you can make the argument that those much tougher pitchers would require much better hitters. And you want to get much better hitters, more disciplined, more effective bats in the lineup for those spots. And so, getting a Carpenter in for a guy like, one of your catchers, right? Like if you get him in for a Trevino or Higashioka, or if you're ever to put him in for a Donaldson, right? Like that matters. That's going to mean something down the road. It's going to mean something in that game situation. Something that, ultimately for the Yankees is very important. This game's extremely important. This is do or die. Right. So, I think for the Yankees, at least, I wouldn't sit Stanton. I think sitting Stanton in the postseason would be, I think that's too big of a risk to take. I think, putting him in the outfield and then taking him out for Hicks when later down the road, you could see a matchup with Clase or Karinchak and you'd much rather have Carpenter there instead of Hicks. And that could be a deciding part of the game. And you can't go to Carpenter there. You can't go to even another pinch hitter because Hicks is your only other outfielder you can reliably trust outside of LeCastro. You may use LeCastro to pinch run. So, you want to have all your options available. You want to be able to make sure that you're able to go to different guys if need be. And most importantly, when it comes to Aaron Hicks, he's not when it comes to like putting the ball, doing something when he puts the ball in play, doesn't really do much with it, but at least know he's not going to swing at balls. I at least have that comfort with Aaron Hicks. He does have 8 defensive runs saved in left field, so there is some defensive value there, and he's a better base runner than most. So as your 9 hitter, you're not going to feel like you have the worst player on planet Earth there. And he's the obvious guy you pinch hit for, or, he's a guy you can, steal a base with or whatever it may be. But you'd rather have him in the lineup in those less high leverage, less, my season's on the line moments, and more so have Carpenter in those late game situations against the best of Cleveland's bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe you just kind of utilize Matt Carpenter situationally later in the game against a specific arm. I do kind of get the sense this Savali would have been a good matchup for him, but maybe you're better off not using him to begin and then using him later on, as you suggested. So definitely an interesting argument, but I do want to discuss this IKF thing too, right? So if you guys are unaware, there's a video going around circulating social media where IKF is heckled by fans, and he's driving in his car, just trying to leave the stadium, and they're kind of cursing at him. They're kind of yelling at him. And I feel like we are better than that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not generalizing the entire Yankee fan base, because I know a lot of people would never do like something like that. But I think there's a difference between criticizing someone's game on whether it's on a YouTube channel or whether it's on social media and saying, he's not playing well. Here are the numbers to support that, and why. We have never here said that IKF is a bad person. We don't know him personally. We don't know what his background is. And by all accounts, I believe he's a pretty great guy. And that's a whole different story. But, when people are going at him in person and saying bad things or cursing at someone who's obviously going through a rough bout, obviously just benched for Oswaldo Cabrera, a rookie. I imagine mentally he's probably not in the best place. He already suggested a couple of days ago in an interview that he is really taking it tough. The social media, he obviously looks at everything early in the season. He hasn't recently, but those things add up. And if you've ever been on social media, you can obviously kind of sympathize with people being, criticized or maybe in a hostile manner. But I just tend to think that this is not what we're about. As Yankee fans, I feel like we expect a lot of our players, but we expect a lot of them based on their performances on the field and their numbers, not based on them being a good person or not. So we have to remember that these guys are human beings. And I think that is the foremost conclusion that we can come to, is that, we have to respect them as people, but we have the right to criticize them as players, just as anyone with anybody would do, whether you're a banker and you get the numbers wrong or whatever your job is. Maybe I make a spelling or an error with the numbers on the podcast. You guys can criticize me for that. That's warranted. But end of the day, am I a bad person because I messed up a stat? No, that's taking it too far across the line. Some of these players have gotten death threats. Obviously IKF's dad went on social media and started kind of going back at fans and whatnot. And I think that's just irresponsible behavior. I think that it doesn't represent what our fan base is about. And I'm embarrassed for those people. And it's an embarrassment to our franchise and our organization and the team that we love. So I just wanted to put that out there, Ryan. I don't know, what your thoughts are, but it really rubbed me the wrong way. And I really felt kind of pissed off because that's not who we are. And I don't associate with those people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, ultimately, they're people, right? Doing their jobs. I'm not saying that, getting booed at the stadium is something that doesn't come with, the job description sometimes, but that's at the stadium when you're on the field. When you're not on the field, you're not, it's no longer the environment for you to start, just booing guys randomly, right? He's a person, right? He's trying to leave the stadium, he's trying to go home. Probably tired, just like everyone else at the stadium, probably annoyed, just like everyone else at the stadium. Because if you think you're annoyed because you have to show up at 6 o'clock for a game and you waited a bunch of hours, how do you think these players feel who showed up in the afternoon, geared up, ready to go, just came back from a flight, probably been warming up all day, getting themselves ready, amped up, keeping themselves locked in, keeping themselves focused. They don't go, they don't just go to concessions, have some beers and get, blackout drunk and to try to pass the time. They stay locked in. They go hitting the cages down in the clubhouse. I mean, these guys are trying to stay focused all game. And you're trying to block his car and you're not letting him leave. Like, come on, we're better than this. These are people at the end of the day. There's no dehumanization based on, what your contract looks like at the major league level or what your OPS looks like at the major league level or how many errors you've made. You're still a human being. You're still deserving of all the respect the human being should get. Ultimately, there's not, like, as you mentioned, like we'll criticize a player, but you don't have to go, you can criticize them by, you want to start a podcast and say, hey, I don't think this player is very good. Sure. You want to go on Twitter and say, hey, this player's not very good. Sure. But you don't go up to them, to their car after a game or not even after a game, after trying to leave the stadium, block them and start yelling and cursing at them at their window and stuff like that. That's unacceptable, right? These are people at the end of the day. If you did your job poorly, or if I did my job poorly, if anyone did their job poorly, it's hard enough to already know you're doing your job poorly. You don't need people coming up to you after work and after all that stuff to try to, remind you or try to belittle you because they don't like how you play the sport of baseball, which is ultimately, entertainment for us and nothing more. This isn't a world crisis. We're not going to wake up tomorrow on the streets if IKF makes an error, right? It's going to upset me from a sports world, but I'll move on. Everyone will move on. Everyone will, we'll come back next year and we'll hype ourselves up for a World Series run or something. But, if you take sports this seriously, you gotta find something else, man, because this is not acceptable. These are still people.
100% agreed, but let's turn our attention back to Game 5 today, 4 p.m. Really weird timing. MLB once again screws over everybody that actually has to work and has a job in life and can't go watch a game at 4 freaking o'clock in the afternoon. Don't really get it, but again, the Houston Astros are the ones that walk away with an advantage here in terms of this game. I do believe that the Yankees have the advantage. Nestor Cortez versus Austin Savali is a very good situation for the Yanks. Cortez would have been a bullpen arm yesterday, or, at least be able to pitch an inning or two. And now they're looking at him and, seeing how long he can take us. So I'm very excited to see what the result is today. The offense, this offense can blow up at any time. They're capable of double-digit performances at any given moment, especially against a kind of a crappy pitcher in Savale. But again, the Yankees have played down to their opponents before. We've seen this happen. They have to beat lesser teams. Like, look what the Astros just did to Seattle. They completely dominated them. We have to beat teams that we're supposed to beat. That's ultimately what it comes down to. If you can't beat teams you're supposed to beat, how on earth are you going to beat teams that are equally matched or equally as good or very good postseason squads? Like, Astros are just a significant postseason team. They're always really, really difficult to be, especially when they're well rested and healthy. The Yankees obviously are dealing with a little bit of issues on both sides of that equation. But nonetheless, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts below. Talked about a couple of different discussions, Matt Carpenter, IKF, the pitching matchup. Always happy to hear perspective narratives below in the YouTube comments, for our friends. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe. I'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.